Hi, everyone. This is Paula, your holistic health coach. With the new year right around the corner, we wanted to discuss one of the top New Year's resolutions for most people, getting in better shape. And Rob has come up with this absolutely new, amazing workout for those of us over 40. Considering that I'm 50 now, that totally includes me. And I'm very excited about this. When he was telling me about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is seriously so brilliant. I love this idea. He always comes up with lots of ideas, but this was just spot on, especially for the grouping that I'm in and knowing that I used to just really beat myself up a lot in the gym, trying to just get in shape and stay in shape and all of that, and spending lots of time doing it and getting super frustrated sometimes because it took so much of my time. And so we're really, really excited. So this new program is called Simply Fit After 40, the last workout you'll ever need. So Rob, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you came up with, a little bit about the program, and give people a good idea of what it's all about.
Yeah, the workout actually was born out of a necessity, and that was my own necessity. I found that I was having a real difficult time getting everything in. And when it comes to fitness and health, there's so many different things you have to do. There's strength training, there's cardiovascular, there's flexibility, there's mobility, there's coordination, there's balance, there's stability. There's all these different elements. Like, how do you get it all in and not feel like you have a part-time job just to take care of yourself? And I have to be out of the door of our house by 7 in the morning. So I wanted to make sure I could put all of that, get all of that in before I leave for the morning, because it's a great way to start your day. But my non-negotiable has really become my meditation. And when I say my non-negotiable, I put meditation actually over anything, including exercise, because meditation has probably changed my life and my physiology more than anything that I've done. But I wanted to make sure I did my meditation and then I went into the exercise, because it put my mind in a really good place, put my body in a really good place. But again, getting all these elements in, it takes a lot of time. So I had to chip away and continue to chip away and just see, what can I discard and what can I continue to leave in the exercise program to get the most bang for my buck. I want it to be safe. I want it to be efficient. And I didn't want to beat up my nervous system. I wanted to make sure when I got done with my exercise, I felt good, I felt refreshed, and I felt ready to start my day.
Yeah, I've really noticed, like, when you're finishing up, when you're done, you just feel more relaxed, but you have good energy and feel happy. It seems like it's really, really been a really great transition for you with your working out.
Yeah, obviously we've been together for a long time. So you've seen me over the years, and high intensity was always the big thing. And for me, it was like, I got to work harder. I got to be more intense, and place enough stress on my body to really continue to challenge my body. And it got to the point where now, as I've gotten older, again, strategies have to change. Hormonally, biochemically, we're changing so much, and your strategies have to change with it. And if they don't, you're going to find yourself more vulnerable to getting sick, more vulnerable to getting injured. It can actually disrupt your sleep. All the negative things that can actually come from something that's supposed to be very positive in your exercise routine. However, most people just don't know how to structure an exercise program.
Such a good point. We see so many different people that come in and they're like, I tweaked my back at the gym. I did this, I did that, and they're over 40. So it's really interesting. They can be under 40 too, but you see it more often with over 40. As the hormones start fluctuating, people have more challenges. I recently read 90% of the population never really achieves appreciable results with their workout program. Why do you think that is?
Oh boy.
What's behind that? What's behind that?
Geez. I can go on for a little while on this, but I think the number one thing is a poor time perspective. And what I mean by that is if people aren't getting results like yesterday, they either get frustrated or they quit. They might end up getting hurt too, because maybe it's a poorly prescribed exercise, maybe inappropriate for them. But the analogy I like to give people, it's like you go into your garden and you plant some seeds and you're trying to grow this plant, and you plant your seed today, and tomorrow you stand in front of the garden and say, well, where's my yield? Where's my plants? Well, obviously nature doesn't work that way, and neither does our body. So people overestimate what they can do in the short term, and they underestimate what they can do in the long term. And so really, you got to have a really good sound structured program for you and your physiology. And once you have that well-structured program for you, and what I mean by for you, I mean for you, don't do a cookie cutter type program. It might not be appropriate for you. And so once you get that program, then you have to look at, how do I spend 6 months or the next year really dialing this in? And I think that most people, when it comes to exercise, they lack so much focus. And I kind of have this term I like to use. It's a TPM, which stands for theory. So understand the theory behind it. Why are you doing it? Well, what am I trying to accomplish? What is this going to give me? P is for practice. So I have to practice the skill meaning, whatever type of exercise you're doing. And then ultimately it's mastery. And most people never, ever reach any level of mastery when it comes to exercise. And this is why so many people are inefficient with their time, and and that's at best. At worst, they're doing things that are potentially injurious to their body. So they end up, tweaking something. So we have to have a well thought out plan. We have to execute that plan with a level of proficiency that, really requires a lot of mental energy, and focus. And that's another thing that people don't tend to implement in their workouts, enough focus. So the other thing is, if they are exercising by themselves, either they know, unfortunately, enough to be dangerous, or they're just going to be really inefficient. So they don't know how to structure an exercise program. Maybe biomechanically they're not very sound in how they're doing an exercise. And there's so many times, like if we ever travel and we go into a gym, it's just mortified watching people exercise, and they're so clueless. And this is why so many people end up with orthopedic problems. They hurt their back, they hurt their shoulder, they hurt their knees, because they're excessively loading those joints because they're not doing the exercise properly.
One of the things that I think about is, like, with this program, I think is so wonderful is that it combines like mindfulness with fitness. And I don't really know if that's ever really been done besides the yoga. But I mean, this particular program that you have, having flexibility, but creating the mindfulness, the flexibility with your fitness program. How did you come up with that? Like, what made you think about putting all of those elements together into one workout?
Well, I think the number one thing is people, because they've never really learned how to exercise from a standpoint of science, they don't make the connection between their mind and their body. They're basically just kind of going through the motions with their body. And the more you refine that movement, the more you refine that skill, you become more metabolically efficient, meaning you're going to be able to burn fat more effectively. You become safer. You are able to dictate the state of your nervous system. Instead of always being in fight or flight, you can move into more of a parasympathetic state where you're more rest and digest in a workout. And so you're not beating up your body so much. So I think just understanding all the elements that go into a workout is critical. And the mindfulness one, other than, people that practice yoga, it's just not something that's done. And here's the one thing, and you'll appreciate this one. So Paula loves music, loves music. And I love music too, but when it comes to music tends to evoke certain emotions. And so it can create certain memories from your past. It might want to, or you might want to get up and dance, or, just kind of how you're moving your body. So if you're doing more like just aerobic activity, like let's say you're on a treadmill or an elliptical or a spin bike, I think music's great. But when you are doing your strength training, you have to be very careful with music that has lyrics in it, because what it does is it shifts your focus. You start singing the song, and then you can only control one thought. We can only hold one conscious thought. And so if we're singing or we're thinking about the lyrics, then it takes our focus away from the execution of the movement, which leaves us more vulnerable to injury. We're not going to be as efficient. So for me, it's almost a form of meditation, because, I've been doing this for a long time, over 3 decades. And, I'm still in search of the perfect repetition. I'm still in search of the perfect execution of whatever movement I'm doing. And, I've gotten really refined. I move well, but there's still things that I know I can do better. And if you have that focus and you have that attitude and that mindset, then you're like always reaching for something. But what you're going to find is your movement's going to get more and more fluid. And as your movements become more fluid, and how you move your body becomes more fluid, your whole life changes, right? So we have to think of exercise in terms of movement. And I always told clients that if you're biomechanically sound with an exercise or movement, then you should be aesthetically pleasing to the eye, right? So someone who knows nothing about exercise or nothing about a sport, whether we're talking ballet or figure skating or, basketball or whatever high level, a beautiful dancer, they just look beautiful and elegant executing whatever they're executing, right? And I think most people, even if they don't necessarily have a love for a sport or a movement, can appreciate the beauty of when the body's fully integrated and moving harmoniously. And because we're sitting so much, because of technology, because of injury, posture changes, and we get tighter, we become less flexible, less mobile in the joints. That all affects us and in how we move. So that's why I put all these elements in the workout.
Yeah, I think that's just amazing. I think it's really great for many different aspects of it, stress relief. And speaking of that, people often work out for stress relief. What do you think about that?
Well, what we have to do is really qualify that question and have an understanding of what that individual's level of stress is, because exercise in itself is a stressor. So in order to improve, you have to place something called systematic overload on your body. Well, if you look at our model that we have at the Body Project, we talk about all the stressors that can lead to one symptom. So you have food stress, you have heavy metals, you have immune challenges, you have chemicals, you have scars, you have emotional stress, you have structural stress. So you have all these stressors. So if your body is really stressed out, additional like high intensity exercise may not be appropriate for you. So most people don't know how to evaluate their own physiological stress. Let's say you're in, a bad relationship, or, you hate what you do for a living. Let's say you are not eating as well as you probably should. You're not sleeping as well as you could. These are all stressors on the body. And now all of a sudden you want to go beat yourself up doing a high intensity exercise because it'll make you feel better. Now, it might make you feel better for the time being because of the release of endorphins, feel good hormones, but at what cost to your nervous system? And what happens, it becomes a slippery slope. And so we have to evaluate, and that's where Paula comes in. I mean, obviously, her specialty is evaluating stressors on the body. So again, food stress and heavy metals and immune challenges. So, it's always important to understand where your starting point is. Like if you're in a good, healthy position, you might be able to do more of a high intensity workout. But the average person, particularly for us, in our 50s, we can't handle the same level of stress we could in our 20s or 30s because, variables change. So we have to take a look at, the exercises we're doing, the exercise program we're doing. So with an exercise, a lot of times people are doing something in the gym that they saw. Maybe they saw it in a book. Maybe they watched someone doing it. It's like, oh, that looks cool. I'm going to do that. Well, that exercise might not be appropriate for that individual. And even in class, if you go to a class, you sometimes might not get someone who's really, really qualified to understand all these variables. And so you might not have someone who has a really watchful eye or knows your medical history. And so they're not going to modify it. You're basically doing a cookie cutter program, right? And so this can just stress your body out and really push you over the edge. And another thing too is we always want to think about in terms of an exercise, we want to do the lowest progression of that or the lowest regression of that exercise. So if I master that regression, then I progress, then I master that, and then I progress from there. But a lot of times you see people doing a level 3 exercise, they can't even do a level 1 exercise. And so we have to take a look at, not as exercise a good or a bad thing. The question we have to ask is it appropriate for the individual who's doing it and what they're doing? So it really comes down to what's appropriate for the individual, and not just globally what you read in an article or, even what someone at the gym said. It's you got to look at you as the individual who's doing that particular activity.
That's so important because so many people they're just not educated on fitness or what type of fitness would be, most appropriate for them. So even when I used to work at a gym, I used to we used to watch trainers, and we were like, holy moly, they were having some people do some crazy stuff. You're like, that's not really appropriate for that person. You're like, oh my gosh, it was super interesting.
No,
it was quite the wake up call on my end. I'm like, whoa, when you're pointing stuff out, I'm like, yeah, that 80-year-old lady should not be doing walking lunges, and she's just rep counting her. We're like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. That poor lady. And people are paying for that.
Well, and the thing is, I think one of my favorite things is I used to have clients that would travel, or they go visit a friend or a family member, and they would go join one of their exercise classes. And they were so excited to come back and share with me, oh my gosh, you would have been mortified if you would have seen these people's form. And that's the one thing I always took a lot of pride in, is our clients, when it came to exercise, they were very, very diligent. They wanted to be mechanically sound, and they were very, very smart and cerebral with how they were executing it. And so, it's one of the best testaments you could ever have anyone come back and share with you. Is you would have been mortified if you would have seen their form, because it told me that people were really paying attention to what I was saying, and they were noticing the differences. So
what do you think that people would need to think about at an at-home workout program, like in terms of different exercises?
Well, I think number one, people really focus on aesthetics, right? How they look over functionality. And so here's the thing. There's a number of things out there that you could do that are going to make you hot, sweaty, and tired. And there's a lot of things out there that you can burn a lot of calories, right? And so maybe you could lose some weight, maybe even improve your cardiovascular fitness, but at what cost to your functionality? And so what I mean by that is everyone has to do basic, fundamental, foundational exercises, and they really need to learn how to master them to a certain level, just because this is what's going to keep people safe, and this is what's going to keep people efficient. So there's so many elements that go into this, and we'll get into a couple more videos where I'll get into the various elements that everyone should have in an exercise program. But, the big thing is identifying what your objective is. Like, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And so then we have to, basically work from there, and then just see what is the level of your nervous system. Like, what do we need to integrate, or what do we maybe need to take away in your program? So it's one of those questions that's hard to just throw out there some sort of general answer, because it is all contingent on the individual we're talking about, just because everybody's stress load and everyone's physiology is different.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to move forward and get our next video done to be able to see a little bit more of the details. I think the structure of the different components of the workout is going to be really interesting for people to hear, how they can incorporate the mindfulness and the flexibility with the strength and the cardio all at once in about a 30-minute workout. So I think that's going to be a really good video. So everybody stay tuned for the next video to go through more of the details of this wonderful new Simply Fit over 40 workout.